iba-iba ang pangalan, iba-iba ang titles. So sana masali siya.
That was Vice President-elect Sara Duterte Carpio, fresh from her inauguration in Davao City, where she talked about her plans for office.
Among them, her programs as Education Secretary, which include enforcing mandatory military training and bringing back face-to-face classes as early as August. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Hall.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Less than 24 hours after she took her oath as Vice President-elect, Sara Duterte laid down her plans as the incoming Education Secretary, including a push for mandatory military training.
She also eyes a return to full face-to-face classes come August, as well as a review of the K-12 program. Marian Enriquez with The Big Story.
A day after taking her oath of office, Vice President-elect Sara Duterte laid down some of her plans as incoming Education Secretary. Though the call to implement mandatory military training is not under her department, Inday Sara is hoping that the incoming Congress will prioritize its passage.
I hope that it will be included since marami namang pending bills dyan sa Congress with regard to that. Iba-iba ang pangalan, iba-iba ang titles. So sana masali siya.
This has been on Inday Sara's wish list since she announced her candidacy. Question is, will Congress push for it as part of the priority agenda? It may not be far off as she chairs the CMD, perceived to be the likely majority party in the lower house. Incoming Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte is also looking to fully implement face-to-face classes by August. She will also prioritize the review of the K-12 program as instructed by President-elect Bongbong Marcos.
It is something na napag-usapan din namin ni President Marcos, and he already gave instructions with regard to the review of the implementation of the K-12 program of the Department of Education.
Duterte said she is open to dialogue with education stakeholders and will personally meet with outgoing Deputy Secretary Leonor Briones on Saturday.
Ang success ng City Government of Davao is precisely that we partner with the private sector. I will take that klase na pagtatrabaho doon sa Department of Education.
With just a few days left as mayor of Davao City, Inday Sara bid her colleagues at the Davao City Hall goodbye, though she vows to still visit from time to time as long as her schedule permits. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
How does the incoming Vice President and Education Chief's plan sit with education stakeholders? That big question and more with Antonio Tino, former representative, now President of ACT Teachers Party List. Welcome to The Big Story, Mr. Tino.
Hi, good evening, Robbie. Good evening to our viewers. Good evening.
First of all, I want to ask you about that review of K-12. Do you think it's time to take a look at how we've been doing under that program?
Yeah, most definitely. That has been one of the advocacies of ACT and our party list for quite some time. And it will be quite interesting because one of the key points that we have been asking to be addressed is the removal of the history subject in particularly in the high school curriculum, whether junior or senior high school, the teaching of Philippine history in particular. So after the implementation of the K-12, the new K-12 curriculum in around 2012, now our students only get to study Philippine history in grade 5. You know? And after that, there's no more Philippine history in the curriculum. So, I mean, we've been saying that this is one major reason why, you know, there's been a proliferation of fake news, revisionist history, particularly our recent history. And of course, we have to mention the revisionism regarding the martial law period. So really, we have to, while the review of the K-12 curriculum has to be done, we have to be vigilant that it is being done under a Marcos presidency.
Okay. Now, another thing, of course, that the Vice President-elect has been very vocal about the return of paramilitary training. Before, it wasn't necessarily in the context of ROTC. But whatever it is, and whether or not this falls under high school, which is under DepEd, or CHED, which is for college, what do you think about trying to bring back military training for our students?
Well, it's been more than a decade since mandatory military training has been taken out of the curriculum. A proposal to that effect has been under discussion in Congress for the past several years, and the most recent position that I'm familiar with is that the schools themselves, including DepEd at the time, were saying that it would not be right to introduce mandatory military training in basic education because we're talking about minors. So even in senior high, the students are below 18 years old. No? So that would be considered as mandatorily requiring, in effect, children or minors to take up military service. So that would be problematic. So as far as we're concerned, our position remains the same. No, there's no need for mandatory military service in basic education or higher education for that matter. The current setup where it can be voluntary in college level education is working. So better leave it at that.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Mr. Tino. That was Antonio Tino, President of ACT Teachers Party List. And apart from being Education Secretary, Duterte Carpio also has to complete the transition of power as next Vice President. How's that coming along, Gretch?
Well, Robbie, Vice President Leni Robredo is inviting incoming VP Sara Duterte to join her last General Assembly on June 27. The OVP has opened its doors to the new administration for anything they might need for the transition. OVP spokesman Barry Gutierrez said that Robredo and Duterte have yet to talk formally, although Robredo herself has toured Duterte's staff inside the Quezon City Reception House for transition. The incoming VP will also use the same office once her term officially starts.
So, maayos naman ang koordinasyon, maayos naman ang pag-uusap. Smooth naman ang ating nagiging transition at yan naman ang ating talagang pakay dito sa puntong ito.
These are the other big stories tonight. With a looming food crisis, President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. takes on the task of also serving as Agriculture Secretary when his term begins. Oil prices are set to go up for the third straight week in a row. The Energy Department is no longer discounting the possibility of pump prices reaching 100 per liter. And Tropical Hot is selling like hotcakes. Find out what is causing the resurgence of the classic 80s and 90s food joint after the break.
big story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The Energy Department warns fuel prices in the country could hit a new high if hikes continue. Tonight's big number, 100 pesos. That could be how high pump prices may go should the weekly increases on oil persist. DOE assures the public, though, that this is unlikely to happen in a single weekly increase.
Meanwhile, motorists should brace for another round of oil price hike starting Tuesday. Diesel, which costs as high as 95 pesos right now, will see a 3 peso and 10 centavos rise per liter. As of June 14, diesel prices have already increased by more than 40 pesos.
As for gasoline, it will cost up to 80 centavos more per liter this week. A liter of gasoline may now fetch for as high as 98 pesos. So far this year, gasoline has had a 28 peso and 70 centavos per liter markup.
And as oil prices keep going up, many TNVS drivers are choosing not to hit the road again.
This as a TNVS company is asking for a higher flag down rate to recoup losses. Gerard De La Peña with the report.
A part of the compartment of Chris's TNVS unit has become a storage for his personal belongings. He said he only goes home to Bulacan on days that his unit is coded due to high prices of fuel.
Talagang pahirap na pahirap po kasi ramdam po talaga namin yung pagtaas ng gasolina eh.
Others like Christopher sought other jobs rather than go back to driving.
Pag nasa Grab ako, aasa ako sa job na darating sa akin. Kung walang pasahero, abono pa ako gasolina, abono ako ng boundary.
Many drivers opted not to go back after the strict lockdowns brought about by the pandemic. Transport network company Grab said that out of the 65,000 unit cap set by the LTFRB, only about a third, or roughly 20,000, are now plying the streets. But now that restrictions have been eased, the challenge has shifted to soaring oil prices.
Obviously, they're scared that gas prices are going to go up and they're not going to make money. So buying a car is a big capital decision for them.
To somehow help its drivers, Grab is asking the LTFRB to raise the flag down rate by 20 pesos. Because of the low supply of TNVS units, commuters like Micah find it difficult to get a ride.
Minsan matagal may mga, if ever na may makuha ka, meron magka-cancel, ganun.
Starting Tuesday, motorists will have to shell out more for fuel. Prices of gasoline will go up by 80 centavos per liter, diesel by over 3 pesos, and kerosene by 1 peso and 70 centavos. The Energy Department attributed this to weak peso, higher importation costs, and other factors.
Bagyang lumiit ito, no? And we're expecting na lilit nga. Kaya lang ang bayaran ho ay nasa dolyar, no? At biglang tumaas ho ang presyo ng dolyar last week. Kaya yung multiplier ho natin sa dolyar, hindi ho constant tumaas. Kaya i-multiply mo yung per barrel, tumaas yung net effect niya. Ayun ho ang isang rason kung bakit talagang bagyang tumaas ulit.
With oil prices still on the rise, groups representing different public transportation modes are all calling for fare increases to offset the impact of high pump prices on their livelihood. For News 5, Gerard De La Peña, We Are One News.
President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says he himself will act as Agriculture Secretary, taking on the tough task of managing the country's food stock in a time of tight supply. For the details, we have mobile journalist Julie Baiza reporting live from Mandaluyong. Julie, what's first on the agenda as Agriculture Secretary for incoming President Marcos?
Robbie, that is right. The President-elect announced that he will take the helm as the head of the Agricultural Department. In the meantime, asked about his priorities, he said that he will focus on increasing rice production. He also wants to restructure the agency, noting that the DA should be responsive to the challenge of the increasing prices of food. The President-elect also asked that the Trade Department, the National Economic and Development Authority, and the Budget Department to make an economic forecast on the challenges the country may face in the coming months.
As to agriculture, I think that the problem is severe enough that I have decided to take on the portfolio of Secretary of Agriculture, at least for now.
Robbie, aside from the food supply crisis, Marcos Jr. also briefly talked about the oil situation. He says suspending excise taxes on oil would not necessarily help. Instead, he says he would rather focus on giving assistance to the transport sector. Robbie?
Julie, now that we know he will step in as Department of Agriculture Secretary, at least in the meantime, there are still a number of cabinet posts left vacant. Did he give any updates on the other cabinet posts?
Robbie, he did say that they already have names for other agencies like the Health Department and the Department of Foreign Affairs. He said they have at least 2 names for each department. Marcos Jr. added that he targets to name the appointees next week before his inauguration. Robbie?
Maraming salamat. That was mobile journalist Julie Baiza.
For the big story in sports, another historic performance from Kaloy Yulo as he dominated the 9th Senior Artistic Gymnastics Asian Championships in Qatar. He bagged 3 gold medals and 1 silver, the country's first in the continental tournament. The 22-year-old Olympian topped the floor exercise, pole vault, and parallel bars event. After the historic Asian Championship, Yulo is set to compete in the Artistic World Championships in Liverpool from October 29 to November 6. Meanwhile, in the PBA, Commissioner Willie Marshall has summoned Calvin Abueva after his ejection from the game yesterday against Barangay Ginebra. The private meeting with the Magnolia Hotshots forward supposedly took place earlier afternoon. Abueva left the game early in the 4th quarter of Magnolia's 89-84 victory over the Gin Kings after incurring 2 technical fouls. Abueva, though, was in no mood to wait for the end of the game and headed straight home after his ejection. Some spectators even claimed that they heard Abueva shouting Japan and bye PBA as he was leaving the dugout.
Papuntahin ko si Alvin bukas. Tinanong ako ano sasabihin niya. Around siguro bago mag-2, 1:30 to 2.
Time for another quick break. When we return, another case of gun violence in the United States took the life of a Filipino lawyer who was supposed to enjoy his vacation with his mom. And a sudden craving for tropical hot was stirred online after Twitter users shared fond memories of the beloved 80s Pinoy fast food place. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hong. Gun violence has become so rampant in the United States, so much so that no less than 10 incidents have been reported in Philadelphia alone over the weekend.
One of those incidents took the life of a Filipino lawyer who was enjoying time with her mother during their vacation. Camille Samonte with the story.
What was supposed to be a fun holiday took a tragic turn. Filipino lawyer John Albert Lilo was vacationing in the U.S. with his mom when their Uber ride in Philadelphia was fired at over the weekend. They were supposed to catch a flight to Chicago, but never made it after one of 6 bullets fired at their vehicle struck Lilo in the head. Lilo was rushed to the hospital but died the next day. His mother, Leah, sustained minor wounds from shrapnels following the shooting. New York Consul General Elmer Cato visited Lilo's family in Philadelphia. Cato said that they are coordinating with local police to investigate the shooting.
It appears to be a random shooting. At this point, we don't know if they were really targeted. We could not say if this was related to Asian hate.
New York Consul General Elmer Cato admits that gun violence is rampant in America. In fact, 9 separate shooting incidents that killed 3 people were reported in Philadelphia on Saturday. The Philippine consulate in New York wants an assurance that justice will be served for the death of the 35-year-old lawyer.
We also underscored the need to make sure that justice is served, that the suspect is identified and arrested.
As a lawyer, Attorney Lilo used to work for Senator Laila De Lima. De Lima was shocked and saddened upon learning of Lilo's death and has described the attorney as a man of high energy and vibrant spirit. He was also one of the lawyers of outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo during the canvassing of votes in the recent elections. The VP has asked for prayers and sympathies to the Lilo family. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Meanwhile, as the country sees a steady uptick in new COVID infections, the Health Department is warning that cases are now starting to peak. DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere says the Health Department has been closely monitoring Metro Manila as the number of cases doubled in the past week. The number of COVID cases nationwide rose by 60 to 70% over the same week. Vergere says the department is keeping an eye on Ilocos Region, Cagayan Valley, Region 13, and Region 4A. But Vergere clarifies the country is not experiencing another surge.
Unang-una, when you talk about the surge, it's a sudden increase in the number of cases. Pag tinignan nga natin, katulad ng sabi ko, oo, tumataas, pero it is not, hindi ganun kabilis ang pagtaas, hindi ganun kadami ang mga kasong na idadagdag.
Sarap na binabalik-balikan. Tropical hot nostalgia is catching on Twitter, and now the once forgotten fast food chain from the 80s is getting a new lease on life.
Tropical Hot became an overnight viral sensation after one Twitter user started sharing fond memories of the old fast food chain. At JumeJP tweeted photos of Tropical Hot in Escolta back in June 12. He captioned it, "Ako lang ang customer nila." This unleashed a series of tweets from equally nostalgic customers who frequented Tropical Hut's burgers in the 80s and 90s.
Twitter users started sharing photos of the food chain back in the day. This apparently has been driving up sales in its branches across the metro. So much so, they are finding it hard to keep up with demand. And with its newfound fame, Tropical Hut announced it is hiring new staff members in its stores to keep up with the influx of customers.
Kaya ako naka-green today in honor of Tropical Hut.
At saka parang pinapahiwatig mo sa staff na magpapa-burger ka. Congratulations!
Ikaw ang magpapa-burger sa ating
mabuti
dalawa.
may kahati na ako.
Hindi, anong namimiss mo sa Tropical Hut? Naalala
The burger. Masarap talaga yung burger nila.
Diba?
Oo. Nakisama kami dyan. Nakasama kami sa tweet na yan. Kumain kami ni Joy ng weekend.
Parang hindi ko naalala yung lasa. Parang hindi pa yata ako pinanganak.
Ayan. Okay lang yan. Okay lang yan. Tatanggapin ko yan. Sagutin mo na lang. Huwag ka na mag-ano. Basta sagot mo na yan. Congratulations to Gretchen for the Paragala, Pangkabataan, News and Current Affairs by the Holy Angel University. Nung nabasa ko, nakala ko, Paragala.
Oh, pwede rin. Mas apt yata. Maraming salamat sa Holy Angel University para sa award na yan. And syempre sa ating mga boss dito sa One News, si Ma'am Shena, si Sir Patrick, maraming salamat sa tiwala at saka syempre sa inyo. No? Dahil ko nasasabi, this is an award for us all.
Okay.
Alright.
Burger for us all.
Kabuka. Ay, sige, tropical hot lang. Bukas,
Ayan, okay. Sige, bukas.
May discount pa yun. That wraps up today's Big Story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And get vaccinated, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.